They say the wind off Lake Michigan in December doesn't just blow, it hunts. And on the night of December 18th, underneath the deafening roar of the Wabash Avenue L tracks, that wind was trying to kill Zara Williams. She was holding a trash bag in one hand and a styrofoam box in the other. She looked at the pile of wet cardboard behind the dumpster. She knew the unwritten rules of Chicago. Keep your head down. Mind your business. Don't look at what you can't fix. But she saw a hand sticking out from the rags. A hand that was turning blue. She didn't know that the man shivering under that cardboard wasn't a beggar. She didn't know he was a king waiting to reclaim his throne. She just knew that if she walked away, he would be dead by Christmas. Welcome back to Stories by Moonlight. We've all walked past someone in need because we were too cold, too busy, or too scared. But what if the person you saved held the keys to your future? Smash that subscribe button, like, and share. Now, let's enter the freezer. The digital thermometer outside the Chase Bank on the corner read -12 degrees Fahrenheit. It was a lie. With the wind tunnel effect created by the skyscrapers of the Loop, it felt like 30 below. It was 1 week before Christmas. Zara Williams kicked the back door of the iron skillet open with her hip. The alleyway assaulted her. The wind screamed, cutting right through her thin polyester waitress uniform and the threadbare cardigan she wore over it. Her sneakers, bought secondhand at a thrift store in Rogers Park, had a hole in the left toe. The slush seeped in instantly, biting her skin like acid. Above her, the brown-lined train screeched around the curve, a deafening metal-on-metal grind that shook the brick walls of the diner. Sparks showered down from the tracks, dying in the snow before they hit the ground. Zara gasped, the air freezing the moisture in her nose instantly. 3 minutes, she whispered to herself. Just 3 minutes. She tossed the heavy black trash bag into the dumpster. It landed with a frozen thud. She turned to go back inside, back to the warmth of the grease traps and the stale coffee. Then she stopped. In the corner of the alley, wedged between the brick wall and a stack of recycling bins, the pile of rags moved. It was a man. He was curled into a ball, trying to disappear into the dirty snow. He was wearing an oversized army jacket that looked like it had been pulled out of a landfill. He was shivering so violently that the cardboard on top of him was vibrating. Zara's hand tightened around the white styrofoam box she was hiding behind her back. It was the mistake order from table 4, a patty melt with extra onions. Her manager, a tyrant named Rick, usually made them throw the mistakes in the trash to discourage theft. Zara had snuck it out. She looked at the door to the diner. It was warm in there, safe. She looked at the man. Most people in Chicago had mastered the art of the glaze, looking right through. The homeless as if they were part of the concrete, especially during the holidays. People were too busy buying gifts to look at the people who had nothing. Zara tried to do it. She really did. She was broke. She was 2 months late on rent. She had her own problems. But then the man looked up. His face was covered in grime, hidden by the collar of the coat. But his eyes, they weren't the milky, glazed eyes of the addicts she usually saw on State Street. They were sharp, dark, alert. They were the eyes of a wolf caught in a bear trap, in pain, but ready to bite the throat of anyone who came too close. He didn't ask for change. He didn't beg. He just watched her. Zara cursed under her breath. She stepped away from the door. The snow crunched loudly under her feet. She walked toward him. The man tensed. His hand disappeared inside his coat. "Easy," Zara said, her voice trembling from the cold. "I'm not the cops." The train roared overhead again, drowning her out. She waited for it to pass. "I'm not the cops," she repeated, louder. "And I don't have any cash." She crouched down, keeping a safe distance. She set the white box on the ground. She placed a large coffee cup next to it. "It's a patty melt," she said. "And coffee. It's hot." The man stared at the box. Then he looked at her. He looked at the hole in her shoe. He looked at her shivering hands, red and chapped from washing dishes without gloves. "Why?" The word was a rasp. It sounded like gravel grinding together. It was the first time he had spoken in the 3 nights she had seen him. "Because it's Christmas," Zara snapped, hugging herself to keep warm. "And because I'm not going to throw good food in a dumpster while a human being freezes next to it." The man hesitated. Then a gloved hand reached out. The glove was leather, shredded at the fingers, but expensive. He took the box. He didn't say thank you. He just nodded once, a sharp, singular motion. Zara stood up, her knees popping in the cold. "I work the graveyard shift," she said, backing away toward the door. "If you're here tomorrow, I'll bring soup." She didn't wait for an answer. She turned and ran back to the diner door, slipping inside before the cold could claim her bones. In the alley, Kim Tae-hyung watched the metal door slam shut. He opened the box. The steam hit his face. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. He took a bite, the grease and the onions tasting better than any Michelin star meal he had eaten in Seoul. He looked at the door where the girl had vanished. He was being hunted by half the underworld of Chicago. He was bleeding from a wound that wouldn't close. He was supposed to be invisible. But the girl with the hole in her shoe had seen him. And for the first time since his exile began, the monster didn't feel like dying. Zara has nothing. She is freezing, broke, and scared. Yet she shares what little she has with a stranger. Most of us walk past the homeless because we are too busy, or it's not our problem. We justify our cruelty with convenience. We look away because it's easier than feeling the guilt. If you have ever ignored a suffering stranger just to get to your warm car faster, hit the like button. Let's be honest about the cold in our own hearts. The routine lasted for 4 nights. Every night at 3 a.m., Zara brought food. Every night, the man in the alley took it in silence. But on the 5th night, December 23rd, the routine broke. Chicago was in the grip of a whiteout blizzard. The city was burying itself. Inside the diner, the radio was playing a tinny version of All I Want for Christmas Is You. Outside, the world was ending. Zara kicked the back door open, holding a bowl of potato soup. "Hey!" she called out, her voice snatched away by the wind. "I brought—" She stopped. The cardboard shelter had collapsed under the weight of the snow. The man wasn't huddled underneath it. He was face down in the slush, about 5 feet away from the dumpsters, like he had tried to crawl toward the door and failed. The snow around his midsection wasn't white. It was a dark, violent crimson. "Hey!" Zara dropped the soup. It splattered against the ice, steaming. She didn't think about the danger. She didn't think about the fact that he was a stranger twice her size. She ran to him. She fell to her knees in the slush, grabbing his shoulder. "Sir, can you hear me?" He groaned, a low, animalistic sound of agony. She turned him over. His face was gray. His lips were blue, but his eyes were open, glassy, and unfocused. "Leave me," he rasped. "Shut up," Zara hissed, panic rising in her throat. She grabbed his arm. It was dead weight. "You have to get up. I can't carry you. You have to help me." She pulled. He gritted his teeth, a vein popping in his neck, and forced himself to his feet. He stumbled, putting almost all his weight on her. Zara buckled, but didn't break. She dragged him, a massive, freezing weight, toward the diner. She didn't take him into the kitchen. Rick, the manager, would fire her on the spot. She dragged him into the vestibule, the small, concrete airlock between the alley door and the kitchen. It smelled of wet mops, bleach, and old grease, but it was heated. She let him slide down the wall until he was sitting on the concrete floor. He was shivering uncontrollably now. "Where are you hurt?" He didn't answer. His head lolled back against the cinder blocks. Zara's hands were shaking, but her instincts took over. She unzipped the filthy army jacket. Underneath, he was wearing layers of grime. She grabbed the heavy kitchen shears hanging on the mop rack. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I have to cut it." She sliced through the tattered sweater, then the shirt. She gasped. Under the filth of the alley, the man wasn't wearing rags. He was wearing the remains of a Tom Ford dress shirt. The fabric was ruined, soaked in blood, but the buttons were mother of pearl. And on his left wrist, dangling loosely, was a watch. Zara knew watches. She had an ex-boyfriend who was obsessed with them. It was a Patek Philippe Nautilus. That watch cost more than this entire building, she thought, her mind reeling. Who is this man? She peeled the shirt back. Just above his hip bone, a jagged, angry wound was weeping blood. It wasn't an accident. It was a knife wound, a stab. "Who are you?" she breathed, looking up at his face. In the harsh, fluorescent light of the vestibule, stripped of the scarf and the collar, she saw him clearly for the first time. He was beautiful. Devastatingly, terrifyingly beautiful. High cheekbones, a sharp jawline covered in dark stubble, and skin that, despite the grime, was smooth and flawless. He looked like a fallen prince. He opened his eyes. They locked onto hers. For a second, the air in the small room changed. It wasn't cold anymore. It was electric. He reached out. His hand, large and hot with fever, grabbed her wrist. He didn't squeeze. He just held her, grounding himself. "Do not," he whispered, his voice gaining a terrifying clarity. "Call an ambulance. You need a doctor. You need stitches. No police, no doctors." His thumb brushed the pulse point on the inside of her wrist. Zara felt a jolt go straight to her core. It was fear, yes. But it was something else, too. A heavy, magnetic pull. She looked at the blood. She looked at the expensive watch. She looked at the dangerous desperation in his eyes. She made a choice that would change her life. "I have a sewing kit in my locker," she whispered, her voice trembling. "And vodka from the bar." She pulled her wrist free, but her skin still burned where he had touched her. "Don't die before I get back." She ran to her locker. When she returned, he was still awake, watching the door. Watching for her. She poured the cheap vodka over the wound. He hissed, his abdominal muscles contracting hard, ridges of definition appearing even through the pain. "Hold still," she murmured. She threaded the needle. She had to touch him. She placed her left hand on his bare stomach to steady him. His skin was burning hot against her freezing fingers. The contrast was shocking. Every time the needle pierced his skin, his muscles jumped under her hand. He didn't look at the wound. He looked at her. He watched her bite her lip in concentration. He watched a bead of sweat roll down her temple. "You have gentle hands," he murmured, the fever making him honest. Zara stopped. She looked up. Their faces were inches apart. She could smell the iron of his blood and the faint, expensive scent of cedarwood clinging to his skin beneath the dirt. "I'm a waitress," she said softly. I'm used to cleaning up messes." "I am not a mess," he rasped, his dark eyes darkening further, pupils blowing wide. "I am a war." He reached up and tucked a stray curl of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her neck. It was an intimate, possessive gesture. Zara stopped breathing. In that dirty vestibule, surrounded by mops and buckets, the sexual tension was thick enough to choke on. "Done," she whispered, taping a bandage over the stitches. She sat back on her heels, breaking the contact. "You stay here tonight. I lock up in an hour. I'll leave the back door unlocked." Kim Tae-hyung looked at the bandage. Then he looked at the woman who had just stitched him together. "Zara," he said. It was the first time he had used her name. "Yeah? Go home. Lock your door." He leaned his head back, closing his eyes. "The people looking for me, they don't leave witnesses." 2 days passed. Christmas Day. The city of Chicago was silent, buried under 2 feet of fresh snow. The schools were closed. The banks were closed. But poverty doesn't take a holiday. In her studio apartment in Rogers Park, Zara was wearing every piece of clothing she owned. The radiator had hissed its last breath 3 hours ago. She sat on her mattress, staring at the front door. She wasn't waiting for Santa. Bam! 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 The wood of the door shuddered. Dust fell from the frame. "Zara, open up!" It was Eddie. Eddie wasn't just a landlord. He was a bottom feeder who loaned money at 40% interest to the desperate waitresses and single moms of the neighborhood. Zara owed him 2 months' rent, plus the late fees he made up on the fly. "Go away, Eddie," she screamed, grabbing a kitchen knife. "I get paid on Friday." "Friday isn't Christmas, sweetheart. I got gifts to buy." Crack. The deadbolt gave way. The door flew open, hitting the wall with a sickening thud. Eddie stepped in. He was a thick, sweaty man in a cheap leather jacket. He wasn't alone. 2 associates, muscle in tracksuits, crowded into the tiny hallway behind him. Eddie looked around the freezing apartment. He sneered. "You got nothing here, Zara. No TV, no jewelry." He looked at her. A dark, predatory grin spread across his face. "Maybe we can work out a trade." He took a step forward. Zara didn't think. She threw the knife. It missed Eddie's head by an inch, embedding itself in the drywall. While he flinched, Zara scrambled. She didn't go for the door. They were blocking it. She went for the window. She threw the sash up, the freezing wind blasting into the room. "Get her!" Eddie roared. Zara climbed out onto the rusted fire escape. The metal was coated in black ice. She slipped, her shin slamming against the iron railing. She screamed but kept moving. She slid down the ladder, dropping the last 6 feet into the snowy alley behind her building. She landed hard, rolling in the slush. She didn't have her coat. She was wearing gray sweatpants and a thin hoodie. She scrambled to her feet and ran. She didn't run to the police station. The cops in this neighborhood didn't come for girls like her. She ran to the only person who had looked at her with something other than pity or hunger. She ran to the diner. She sprinted 3 blocks to the Red Line station, jumping the turnstile. She rode the train south to the loop, shivering so violently her teeth chattered like gunshots. "He will help me," she thought. "He warned me. He knows about bad men." She got off at Wabash. She ran down the stairs, her feet numb blocks of ice. She turned the corner into the alley behind the iron skillet. "Hey!" she screamed, her voice raw. "Hey, are you there?" She ran to the spot behind the dumpsters. "I need help. They're chasing me, please." She skidded to a halt. The alley was empty. The cardboard was gone. The snow had been swept clean. There was no sign of the man. No sign of the blood. No sign of the king. He was gone. "No," Zara whispered, falling to her knees in the snow. No, no, no. She clawed at the empty ground as if she could dig him up. You said you owed me, she sobbed, the betrayal cutting deeper than the cold. You said you owed me. Tires screeched at the mouth of the alley. Zara turned. Eddie's beat-up sedan blocked the exit. Eddie stepped out, holding a baseball bat. He tapped it against his palm. You throw a knife at me, Zara? He walked toward her, crunching the snow. Nowhere left to run, sweetheart. No knights in shining armor out here. Zara backed up until her spine hit the brick wall. She was trapped, alone, frozen. She closed her eyes, the image of the man's dark, intense eyes flashing in her mind one last time. You liar. She gave everything she had to save a stranger. She risked her job, her safety, and her heart. And when she screamed for help, the world was silent. It is the worst feeling in the human experience, reaching out for a hand and finding only empty air. If you have ever felt completely abandoned by the universe in your darkest hour, comment, I am still standing. Prove that you survived the dark. Eddie raised the bat. Say goodnight, Zara. He swung, but he never finished the motion. Vroom! The roar wasn't a train this time. It was an engine, a massive, high-performance engine. Blinding white LED lights flooded the alley, turning the night into day. Zara threw her hands up to shield her eyes. Eddie froze, squinting into the glare. What the hell? A fleet of black Cadillac Escalades, 4 of them, screeched into the alley, blocking both ends. They moved with military precision, boxing Eddie's sedan in like a toy car. The doors flew open. Men poured out. They weren't cops. They were worse. They wore sharp black suits under heavy wool trench coats. They moved silently on the snow. In seconds, 12 red laser dots appeared on Eddie's chest. Eddie dropped the bat. It clattered on the ice. Who are you people? He stammered, backing away. I'm just collecting rent. The back door of the lead SUV opened. A man stepped out. He didn't look like the ghost from under the cardboard. He was clean-shaven. His hair was slicked back, jet black and sharp. He was wearing a long, black cashmere coat with a silver fox fur collar that looked soft enough to sleep on. He wore black leather gloves. He walked through the slush like he owned the pavement. He walked right past Eddie. He didn't even look at him. He stopped in front of Zara. She was pressed against the brick wall, shivering, tears freezing on her cheeks. She looked at him, at the sharp jawline, the expensive coat, the power radiating off him in waves. You, she whispered, her teeth chattering. You came back. Kim Tae-hyung didn't speak. He unbuttoned his cashmere coat. He took it off. The cold hit him, but he didn't flinch. He draped the heavy, warm coat over Zara's shoulders. It engulfed her. It smelled of cedarwood, expensive cologne, and safety. He buttoned it under her chin with his gloved hands. I told you, he said, his voice deep and smooth, the gravel rasp gone. I pay my debts. He turned around. He looked at Eddie. Eddie was shaking now, and it wasn't from the cold. He looked at the laser dots on his chest. He looked at the man who had just crowned the waitress. Look, man, Eddie squeaked. I didn't know she was with you. She owes me money. She's a nobody. Tae-hyung tilted his head. He looked at his head of security, a massive man named Kai. He says she is a nobody. Tae-hyung walked over to Eddie. He stopped inches from his face. You are holding a weapon, Tae-hyung said calmly, in the presence of my queen. I didn't. Tae-hyung turned back to Zara. Did he touch you? Zara shook her head, clutching the lapels of the giant coat. No, but he kicked my door down. He has my cat. Tae-hyung nodded. He turned to Kai. Find the cat, he ordered, his tone bored as if ordering lunch. Then break his hands. What? Eddie screamed. And his business, Tae-hyung added, walking away. Burn it down. Tonight. Yes, boss, Kai said, as two men grabbed Eddie and dragged him screaming toward the shadows of the dumpster. Tae-hyung walked back to Zara. He didn't ask if she was okay. He knew she wasn't. He bent down and swept her up into his arms. Zara gasped, instinctively wrapping her arms around his neck. The wool of his suit was soft against her cheek. Where are we going? She whispered against his ear. He carried her toward the warm, open door of the Escalade. It's Christmas, Zara, he said, stepping into the car. I'm taking you to the North Pole. The door slammed shut, sealing out the cold, the wind, and the sound of Eddie's screams. The ride to the St. Regis Chicago was silent, but it wasn't empty. Tae-hyung held Zara's hand the entire way. He didn't caress it. He gripped it, as if he were afraid she might dissolve back into the snow. The elevator ride to the 92nd floor was a blur of gold and mirrors. When the doors opened, Zara gasped. The penthouse was a glass castle in the sky. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked down on the frozen, glittering grid of Chicago. The Chicago River was a black ribbon far below. It was warm here. It smelled of vanilla and expensive leather. Go to the bathroom, Tae-hyung said, nodding toward a set of double doors. I will be there in a moment. Zara walked in. It wasn't a bathroom. It was a spa carved from white marble. In the center was a massive soaking tub. She caught her reflection in the mirror. She looked like a wreck, sweatpants soaked in slush, hair matted, eyes wide with trauma. She felt ashamed. Then Tae-hyung entered. He had shed his suit jacket. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the cuffs, sleeves rolled up to reveal thick, tattooed forearms. He didn't look at her shame. He looked at her like she was the only source of heat in the world. He turned on the tap. Steam rose instantly. He poured something into the water, an amber oil that smelled of sandalwood. Take off your clothes, Zara. It wasn't a question. It was a command, but it was soft. Zara hesitated. I'm dirty. I haven't showered since yesterday. I smell like the alley. Tae-hyung walked over to her. He reached out and unzipped her hoodie. You smell like survival, he whispered. Let me wash it off. He peeled the wet clothes off her body. When she stood naked before him, shivering not from cold but from nerves, he didn't rush. He picked her up. He lowered her into the hot water. Zara groaned as the heat soaked into her frozen bones. It was almost painful, the thaw coming so fast. Tae-hyung knelt beside the tub. He didn't get in. He picked up a sponge. He washed her. He started at her feet, the feet with the calluses from standing for 12 hours a shift. He washed her ankles, her calves. He moved up. His hand was large, rough, and incredibly gentle. He washed her neck. He washed behind her ears. I was a ghost, he murmured, his eyes tracking the water droplets sliding down her chest. I was dead in that alley. You breathed life back into me. He dropped the sponge. He reached into the water with his bare hand. He cupped her breast. Zara let out a shaky breath, her head falling back against the marble rim. Tae-hyung, you fed me, he growled, his thumb brushing her nipple, hardening it instantly. Now, you will never hunger again. He stood up. He pulled her out of the water, wrapping her in a towel that felt like a cloud. He carried her to the bedroom. The bed was massive, covered in black silk sheets that looked like ink. He laid her down. He stripped off his own clothes. Zara watched him. She saw the scar on his side, the one she had stitched. It was pink and healing, a permanent mark of her handiwork on his perfect body. He crawled over her. He didn't kiss her lips first. He kissed her stomach. He kissed the hip bone that protruded too much because she skipped meals to pay rent. Mine, he whispered against her skin. He moved up. He captured her mouth. The kiss was starving. It tasted of need and power. He parted her legs with his knee. Look at me, Zara. She looked up into those dark, wolfish eyes. You saved a beggar, he rasped, guiding himself to her entrance. But you are sleeping with a king. He entered her. Slow, deep, absolute. Zara cried out, arching her back. It was a feeling of being completely filled, completely claimed. He didn't move fast. He moved with a punishing, deliberate rhythm, grinding against her, making sure she felt every inch of him. Say it, he demanded, his voice rough. Say you're safe. I'm safe, she sobbed, clutching his shoulders. Say you're mine. I'm yours. I'm yours. He picked up the pace, the friction building into a white-hot fire. Zara felt the tension coil in her belly. The fear of the last week, the adrenaline of the chase, the cold of the alley, it all transmuted into pure, unadulterated pleasure. Let go, he commanded. She shattered. Her orgasm ripped through her, brighter than the city lights outside. Tae-hyung followed her seconds later, groaning her name into her neck, his body shuddering as he poured himself into her. He collapsed on top of her, his weight heavy and grounding. He didn't roll away. He pulled the silk sheet over them, cocooning them in warmth. Go to sleep, my queen, he whispered, kissing her temple. When you wake up, the world will be different. The next morning, Zara woke up to the smell of coffee. Not diner coffee, real coffee. She sat up. She was wearing one of his white dress shirts. It swallowed her frame. She walked out into the living room. Tae-hyung was standing by the window, looking out at the frozen lake. He was on the phone, speaking rapid-fire Korean. He saw her. He hung up immediately. He walked over. He handed her a mug. Drink. Zara took a sip. It was perfect. Where's my cat? She asked. Tae-hyung pointed to the velvet armchair in the corner. Her tabby cat, Miso, was curled up on a cashmere throw blanket, eating from a crystal bowl. He is safe, Tae-hyung said. Kai retrieved him before the fire. The fire? Eddie's building had an unfortunate electrical accident last night, Tae-hyung said, his face completely blank. A total loss. Zara stared at him. She should be horrified, but she looked at the snow falling outside. She looked at the warmth of the penthouse. She looked at the man who had burned down a building because someone scared her. She put the coffee down. She walked over to him. She wrapped her arms around his waist, burying her face in his chest. Thank you, she whispered. Tae-hyung kissed the top of her head. No, he said, his arms tightening around her like a shield. Thank you. He turned her toward the window, looking out at the city of Chicago. Pick a building, Zara. What? Pick a building, any building. I'll buy it for you. Zara laughed, the sound bubbling up light and free. Let's start with breakfast, she said. Tae-hyung smiled, the rare, genuine smile he saved only for her. As you wish, my queen. She saved a beggar and found a king. She risked kindness in a cruel world, and it paid off in obsession, safety, and a love that burns the world down for her. We all want someone who looks at us and says, "You struggle no more." If you are ready for your season of receiving, subscribe right now. Claim your blessing. The king is waiting. Do not let your story end in the cold. Click the next video now.